55. I'm joined by my special guest and special co-host Sean Kiernan from SK Sports Podcast, and my other friend Sean from his podcast. And we're joined by special guest Bostjan Nachbar, former NBA player. Everybody knows him from the New Jersey Nets, and obviously he played overseas too. So I'm really looking forward to this interview. First of all, Bostjan, how are you and your family doing during this tough situation? Obviously, we're in a new year. Hopefully, it comes with some positive news now too.
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. We're doing good. I live in Spain. I live in Barcelona for the last 7 years or so. And, the situation here is not ideal, but it's also not horrible. So luckily we had, since the summer, the fall has been as normal as it can be. School's open and my both daughters are able to play basketball and we're able to move around the city. Restaurants have been open with some limitations. So it's not ideal, but it's as normal as it can be regarding all the circumstances.
So I'm going to let my two special co-hosts start first. So.
All right. So, hey, Bostjan, man, so how has, this virus affected, you helping others? Because I know you were involved with helping other kids, play basketball, involved with the NBA juniors. How has this impacted that? And when would you say you're looking forward to helping others again?
Well, I've been involved with helping kids early in their career, so to say, for a number of years now. One is the basketball camp we do back in Slovenia, which we've been doing for, I believe, 14 years now. And the other thing is obviously as a junior NBA ambassador, which I've been very active in the last 3 or 4 years. Obviously, especially with the junior NBA tournaments that have been going on, before the COVID-19 situation all around Europe, and I've been traveling and supporting kids, and that's been put to a stop right now as a lot of sports. That platform has been moved more to the online platform now, which is far from ideal. So we're all kind of waiting to see, what happens, in the spring/summer. In regards to the basketball camp we do back in my home country, Slovenia, luckily we were able to do it last summer because we do it over the summer each year. And we'll see what this summer brings. But, I can already say that kids and parents are already asking us, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? Is the camp going to be on? And of course, it's not just to me or just to our staff, but we're definitely pulling for it because we know how much it means for kids to be able to play basketball and share the love for the basketball with other kids from different cities, different schools, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to take it day by day. That's all this is right now, the day-to-day process. And I just want to say I appreciate you doing that because, as a former, great player in the league, it's that's just awesome just to give back and help others pursue, their ultimate dream.
That's always been kind of my desire to do. Even, when I was playing in the NBA and the different events and different camps that we had to attend as an NBA players, I never saw it as an obligation that we had to do. I always enjoy doing it. So I came to this idea that it's something that I can or I should offer also in my home country in Slovenia. And that's why we got started, all the way back in 2006, I believe, which was during my NBA career. And it's been going ever since. So, we had, a lot of kids involved in those 14 years. I don't know the exact number, but it's been huge. And Slovenia is a small country, but it has produced so many great players, including now, Goran Dragic and Luka Doncic, who have been, NBA superstars. It's a small piece that we want to add to the long history of Slovenian basketball and to the love that people have for the sport in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. So we'll go in rotation. So Sean, after so Sean went first, and so my other friend Sean will go next, and I'll go last. So that's how we're gonna do it. Sean, you can go now.
All right. How's it going, Boki?
Hey, what's up?
Not much. How are you and your family doing?
We're doing fine. We're doing good. Like I said, we've been pretty lucky if I consider some of the other countries around the world and the restrictions they had. So The springtime has been difficult here in Spain. You know, we had an 8-week lockdown, and that was rough on the kids, mostly because they miss school and they miss all the activities they've been used to. But we got through it, and you know, hopefully, like I said earlier, you know, the springtime is going to bring some more encouraging and more optimistic times that we can start looking forward to, and then moving into the summer. And but we've been okay. We've been healthy, and that's all you can ask for.
Right.
So,
So my question, go ahead.
No, go. Sorry.
My question is, like, who inspired you to play like basketball, or like who inspired you to do your game?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, back when I was, you know, a kid, 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, you know, back in my hometown in Slovenia. I come from a very small town in Slovenia that has less than 4,000 people. So it's almost a village considered to some country standards. You know, I always idolized, you know, former Yugoslavia basketball players, you know, like Dražen Petrović, Toni Kukoc, you know, Dino Radja, Vlade Divac. There were so many, you know, high-profile players. And then just around those Chicago Bulls days in 92, 93, 94, and so on, is when we started seeing more NBA also in you know, on TV in Europe. And that's where I really, you know, start setting my eyes on what I want to do with my life, which is play in the NBA one day. Of course, I mean, it sounds kind of easy, you know. I set my eyes on it, and then I played in the NBA, you know, let's say 10 or 8 years after that. But you know, I realized I was very lucky. You know, obviously some talent helped, but and to stay healthy and to you know, work with the right coaches at the right time, and to have the opportunity to show my talent, to then be drafted and play in the NBA. But you know, like I said, you know, idolizing those players, really being out on the playground. I'm not exaggerating. Every day, you know, just playing basketball. And my dad was a former player on a smaller level back in Slovenia. So I just kind of, you know, always hung out with him, and whenever he would go to play, I would go with him, and that's how it started. But you know, the important thing, I think it is, at least if I, you know, look back and I kind of, you know, think of how I saw basketball back then, was it's always been something that I enjoy doing. It's always been fun for me. It's really never at any point has been an obligation for me, because, you know, my dad wanted me to play, or some coach was pushing me to do it, or, you know, whatever the reason may be. It was always because I enjoyed it, because I loved doing it, because I had fun with it. And, you know, at some point it went from just being a game towards being more of a professional, you know, approach that I needed to make the next step.
Interesting. So when did you realize? So when you were growing up and as a child, and when did you start picking up the basketball, and when did you realize that you can be? Yes, I can make it to the NBA. So when did you start realizing that? And but when did you start like picking up the basketball?
Yeah, well, you know, I started playing very early, at about, you know, I think I was like 7 or 8 was when I started playing. And then by the time I was 14, I moved to a different town, where I went to high school, and started, you know, shortly after already practicing and playing with a pro team that they had there. You know, in Europe, the system is much different. We don't have organized college basketball. You know, after you turn 15, 16, 17 or whatever, most of the time, if you're a prospect, you're gonna join a professional team. You know, there's different levels of professional teams, but you're gonna join one of them, and that's what happened to me. And you know, after that, after playing in Slovenia for a few years, I got an opportunity to go play for Benetton Treviso, which was at that time one of the biggest Italian teams. And interestingly enough, Mike D'Antoni was the coach there.
Oh, wow.
So. You know, people don't know that Mike also we did the European path, and he was a player in Europe, and a coach in Europe as well, before he became a well-known NBA coach. So I was lucky enough to kind of coincide with him at the same time at this legendary basketball club, and he's the one that gave me a lot of opportunities, and kind of pointed me in direction of the things that I need to do or need to improve in order to have a chance to play in the NBA. And so that season that I played for him in Benetton Treviso was one of the turning points, because I went from a player that could potentially be in the NBA one day, maybe, into a 15th pick in the first round. And a lot of that has to do with with Mike D'Antoni coaching me and the success we had with that basketball team. And of course, the opportunity I got there. Because, as a young 20, 21-year-old kid, being a starter already on that legendary team was something that that really, let's say, put my name on the map, and that helped me big time.
Wow. That's awesome. You mentioned, playing underneath Mike D'Antonio, who's obviously, when he went over to the NBA, and he still is, he's an assistant coach now, but, had a very, successful coaching career. But prior, like you said, you got the opportunity to play underneath him. Now, what was that like to pick his brain to learn from him?
Without exaggeration, it was one of the seasons that I enjoyed the most throughout my career, even though that this was one of my earlier or one of my first professional seasons. The reason for it is because Mike has, he had, and I believe he still does have, the approach of what I just mentioned earlier. You have to see a basketball game as a thing that you enjoy doing, as a fun thing to do. You don't have to see it as necessarily as a burden or work or something that pulls you down. It's actually something fun, something you need to enjoy, and that's what he was trying to show us players. You guys need to have fun with what you're doing. And the fast offense that we saw with Phoenix Suns later, that's something we did in Italy. We had Tyus Edney, who was a UCLA former, great, and he was a point guard on that Benetton team, and he was the one that was pushing the ball, and all of us just kind of ran with him, and that was the style that he was pushing for, and it was a fun thing to do. Even practices, I remember that a lot of times when we were playing 5-on-5 and we were right in the middle of going, the starters against the bench players or whatever, playing those games to 11. Once we got to that 11, he would stop practice. And so many of the players said, coach, let us play one more, and he would always be like, you know what, go home, rest up, come back with the same desire tomorrow. And he kept us motivated the whole season long. And I think that's one of the approaches that a lot of coaches don't have, who like to, especially in Europe, practice so long and so hard that the players become fed up with it. And Mike is complete opposite. He will coach you hard, but he's going to coach you in the way so that you almost can't wait for the next day to come so you can come back to practice and prove yourself again. And that's a rare quality, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I guess Sean, okay, you ready?
You can go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so my next question for you is obviously after you played overseas, you got your first opportunity to play for the Houston Rockets. So take me back to when they gave you the first opportunity to play in the NBA, and how grateful are you that Houston gave you that first shot?
I kind of knew towards that season in Italy that Houston is a team that might draft me. They started getting in touch with my agent and brought me over to the States for the workout. So I kind of started getting to feel that I might get drafted by them. The only condition that they had is that I come over immediately, and they developed me for a year. I knew I wasn't physically ready at that time, and it took me a year or so to really start getting some serious opportunity. The only hurdle that I encountered was that the legendary coach Rudy Tomjanovic is the one that drafted me, and the one that really liked my game, and he thought I would fit well with Steve Francis and Coutinho Mobley and Yao Ming and that young team we had at the time. But then the coaching change happened after the year one, and Jeff Van Gundy came in, who is a complete opposite, completely different mentality and different coaching style and different view on what we should be as a team and what I should be as a player.
Right.
So I went through this very difficult second season of trying to adjust to Coach Van Gundy's style of play. Got some opportunity to played some minutes, but in the year three, then got traded also because I kind of asked to be traded or was hoping to be traded to get more opportunity with the Hornets back then, which I did. So it was not the most enjoyable time in Houston as far as on court, because it was really a time for adjustment for me. But a time that now looking back, I believe I've really, really learned a lot, especially from Coach Van Gundy. I think he's a tremendous coach, and I met him later on when he was doing already commentating, and in a lot of games we chatted, and I always told him that I appreciated the way he was coaching me and how hard he was coaching, because I thought I needed it at the time. So I definitely hope he gets another opportunity to coach at some point.
Tony, you can go.
I could go again?
Yeah.
Okay. So So take me back now, because if I'm not mistaken, were you 17 when you first got into the EuroLeague professionally?
That's correct. I played my first season when I was 17. That's right. That's
Wow.
right. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Could you take me through that process? Like, what led you up to that point? Because, that's a really young age to start playing, basketball at a high level in the EuroLeague.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, the system in Europe is much different, and you don't have that college basketball. So, like I said, you get thrown into the fire very early, especially if you're showing talent and showing promise, and one of the big teams picks you up. Which did happen. At that year, I was playing for one of the Slovenian teams, Olimpia Ljubljana, who is one of the biggest team in Slovenia, and I did get some opportunity to play there, at least to get the feel of how EuroLeague basketball looks like and what the level is, and it was a great opportunity for me to experience that at such a young age. Not many players get that opportunity. So when I say that I was thrown into the fire, that's really what happened. As a 17-year-old skinny kid playing against professionals all over Europe, and EuroLeague is no joke. I think last few years people are starting in the States are starting to learn more about EuroLeague, but that's a league that is extremely tough, extremely physical. A lot of very talented players, not just young players, but just even true older veteran professionals, talented players that play there. So that league is a very, very tough league, and it's a league that you need to prove yourself really every night. And the one big difference between EuroLeague and the NBA is that in EuroLeague all the teams want to win constantly.
Yeah.
It's not like in the NBA where you have a team and you realize, okay, we're not good right now, we're a young team, let's give it a 3, 4, 5-year window, draft good, get back in. In EuroLeague is like everybody wants to win now. So the pressure is constantly on. So when you're a young kid, that pressure almost doubles, because you need to perform well for yourself to earn minutes, but also you need to win. So if you don't produce and you don't help the team win, you might not get a chance until the next season. So that was a great opportunity for me. But like I said, at the age 17, it was just I was just taking it all in, but it was a huge experience and a big motivational boost for me to keep doing what I'm doing.
Wow. So before we get to your the Nets career, I want to get to your Hornets career, because I think that's where you made your mark. And obviously, you said they gave you more playing time. So would you say when you got to the Hornets and they gave you the more playing time, so what would you say that your tipping point with the Hornets that made you a better player, and when you got to New Jersey, and that's how you made your mark too in New Jersey?
Well, I mean, with the Hornets, I was able to relax a little bit. Just what I said a second ago. Hornets at that time were a team that was in a complete rebuild mode. When I got to the team, I think maybe a week later after that, we traded away Baron Davis.
Yeah.
I think it was like a week after that. So, the team was in a complete rebuild mode. All of young guys, including myself, who was I think 23 or 20, maybe 23 at the time, maybe 24. I got a lot of chance to play. I needed some time to finally get used to. Okay, I'm getting my 20, 25, even 30 minutes a night to play, which was never the case in Houston. To start just being myself, and in that second part of the season, prove myself enough to earn another 3-year contract with the team, and went into the next year. But then because of, and I can explain the crazy story about my trade to Jersey, but ended up in Jersey, which was for me was great.
Right.
Playing alongside Jason Kidd and Vince Carter and RJ, and that was just amazing. But I can give you guys the whole rundown of how that trade happened, and those are some of the funny stories that you remember later.
Wait, how did it happen?
I mean, the crazy thing was, like I said, I signed the 3-year contract with the Hornets. Obviously at that time, actually, because of the Hurricane Katrina, we relocated to Oklahoma City that year. That was in 2005, 2006 season, I believe. I was sure I was going to be with the Hornets for the duration of my contract, or most of it, or whatever, and didn't think that I would get traded. 3-4 months after I signed the contract.
Right.
The funny thing was that we almost overnight ended up without a big guy, because we had most of the big guys guy, for one reason or the other, they could not play. So we had David West, who was injured or was just recovering back from the injury. So he wasn't.
Yeah.
He was just starting to get his career on track. We had Jackson Roman, who actually broke his hand on going on for a dunk like 2 nights before the trade deadline, and then shortly before the trade deadline, Chris Anderson, the Birdman,
Yes.
he got in trouble for a doping violation. So I think he was like suspended for 2 seasons or something like that. So, and I think we had another big guy injury that would take us 2 months without the big guy. I can't remember who it was. So basically, what happened was all of a sudden we did not have any big guy available. So I remember that we were at practice on the day of the trade deadline in the morning, going through some motions, and everybody's looking at each other like, we don't have a big guy. Like, we got a game coming up in a day or two. Like, how are we gonna play? So everybody knew that the trade is gonna happen. But the funny thing was that the practice is over at like 1 o'clock or something, and 3 o'clock is the trade deadline. So everybody's like, are we trading? Like, what's going on? The players in the locker room are talking. And I remember going home, picking up my wife, and we go to a restaurant to have lunch, and I'm checking my phone, and my agent doesn't call me, and I'm like, man, how is that possible? We're not going to trade for a player? Like, what's going on? So I got home at like 3:15, and I see my name on the ESPN popping up that I got traded to the Nets. So I'm like, I just got traded? Like, that's got to be a mistake. Like, nobody's calling. So I called my agent, and this news was so fresh. And I think whoever found out, I think it was before it was even official. Well, it probably was that the league already posted in, but it wasn't like official.
Right.
So I called my agent. He's like, I have no clue what's going on. Let me call you back. And he calls me back 10 minutes later. He's like, yeah, you're going to New Jersey. I was like, oh my God. Like, I was so mad at the time because the way it happened and the way it was communicated and going to the new team again and going through this process, I hated it. But, luckily it turned complete opposite, and I enjoyed my time the most with the Nets and playing alongside those amazing players and going into the playoffs and playing a big role. That was great for me. But at the time, I was really, really angry the way it happened. So but that's a part of NBA, that's a part of life of NBA player.
Yeah. No, and you want something too, you have every right to, because, at the time, it's just like the way the news was, it's just, you don't know what to believe, because when you hear initial report, you're like, wait, what? How did I pop up on the TV screen, but I didn't receive a call yet from anybody?
And that was kind of a pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, pre-whatever era. Like, we didn't have that. So it was either somebody called you or you saw your name on the TV. And, it was funny. It was funny. And, there was no rumors before that. I mean, we knew the trade might happen, but now on Twitter and so many media is involved in rumors and spreading rumors. I think you can kind of predict if something could happen. Back then, I had no clue, and it just came out of the blue. And but like I said, 2 days later, I was already in a Nets jersey playing the game. So it's been a crazy situation.
All I can say is that's the day where you need Vogue. Vogue.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's funny now to look back at that time and to remember how it all went down. But it's definitely at that time it was nerve-wracking, and nobody likes to go through these sudden changes and relocations. But it was a great experience, and at least now I know much better when players go through that, how they feel, and to talk to them or to advise them, and it's much easier for me to do that and to relate to them. So. It's something that is not pleasant, but it's like I said, it's a part of life of a professional basketball
player. Sean, you had a question?
Oh. You guys pretty much answered all my questions.
So going to now your Nets career, obviously you just mentioned you played with Richard Jefferson, Vince Carter. Man, what a career they had, and also Jason Kidd, Hall of Fame career. So what was it like just playing for that team and playing with those high caliber players? And obviously New Jersey, we went through some struggles, but that team had a lot of great players. So what was it like just playing in New Jersey, and what was the atmosphere like?
It was a different type of environment, coming into a team to play with such established players who have goals and who are highly motivated was something completely different than what we had with the Hornets. So I quickly had to get adjusted that, okay, in this team, this team wants to win, and this team just going into the for qualifying for playoffs is not good enough. They want to get deep into the playoffs every year, and that's what we tried to do in the time that I was there, and obviously before that as well. I didn't get a lot of opportunities to play immediately. It's only after that, my first half of the season that I was there, then going to the full training camp the next year, that I started to get my regular minutes as a sixth man and playing a fairly substantial role for the team that was a let's say a quality playoff team. Obviously, we knew that we didn't have, or not knew, but we kind of felt that we didn't have all the pieces needed to go, to the finals or to win the championship. I think we were always short on having a capable big guy, but that's just something we had to work with. Unfortunately, Nenad Krstić, who was until that time one of the most promising big guys in the league, injured his knee, and he was out for most of my time with the Nets, and he never really recovered from that ACL injury. Which is for big guys a lot of times can be pretty devastating. So that was a big hit for us, and we never really fully had another substitute for him somebody that would be able to, play with the best big guys that would thrown at us in the playoffs, whether that was Shaq with Miami or Zydrunas Ilgauskas with Cleveland Cavaliers, or even Chris Bosh with Toronto, who he did beat in the playoffs, for example, but was an all-star player. So that was the piece that we were missing, but nevertheless, we played the small ball a lot. We played with four smalls and then one big, and we definitely had a lot of fun with it, because running alongside Jason Kidd and then having RJ and Vince, who create a lot of plays for us shooters, that play off of the other guys. That was the most fun I had in my NBA career, and really really enjoyed those Jersey days. I mean, we had some great games and some good runs with that team.
Yeah, you guys sure did. Do you still remain in contact with like Jason Kidd or any of your teammates from the Jersey days?
Not really with Jason. Even though I believe I did run into him a couple of years ago in Vegas in summer league, but I did see Vince a couple of times when I go states especially during the summer league in Vegas when everybody's there. Yeah. With RJ, I'm keeping in touch here and there, but then also with Nenad Krstić, obviously we're closer because he's also here in European side, and we keep in touch. But that's one of the things that I don't keep in touch with those guys day to day, but I'm confident enough or lucky enough to say that if I would need something from one of those guys, I could reach them, and I believe we developed that kind of a friendship. When I was playing there, I think once you go through those season struggles and you win together, I think those bonds kind of stay together for life, even though if you don't talk every day or see each other every day, because we live in completely different sides of the planet. So.
Yeah. Speaking of Richard Jefferson, I've been trying to get him on the show too. He saw some of my stuff recently, and he does a podcast with Allie Clifton. She's a Lakers reporter, and he does a road tripping podcast. So I've been trying to get him on the show. But if you don't mind, can you put in the work? If you don't mind.
I can, but he's so annoying. I hate him. No, I love the guy. He was actually one of my best friends, or the best friend during my Jersey days on the team. We were really close, and even though we kind of played the same position, and we were competitive against each other, we really had always a great relationship. And but I always joke with him and I say, "You're so damn annoying. I can't listen to you." And I really don't listen to any of his podcasts. And actually today when Zach Lowe announced that RJ was a guest on his podcast, I actually tweeted and I said, "I don't believe a word that RJ says." So I'm the most anti-RJ person there is. But I'm saying that as a joke, obviously. I think he's making a great career on a TV platform and podcasting, and I think he's always been destined to do that because he's one of those guys that in the locker room he's the loudest, and he always had to have the last word. Always the smart ass in the locker room that always knew what to say, and everybody laughed when he said something. So it doesn't surprise me that he's successful in his second career.
Yeah.
You want something, that's what you need in the locker room, you know what I mean? You always need someone like that just to have fun with, and you can mess around with,
Every team should have that.
Yeah, for sure. He was one of those guys that if something happened in the game if somebody, for example, tripped and fell and it was ugly to see and everybody tried to help the guy, like he'd be the guy that would be laughing at that guy. He'd be like, man, did you see how he fell? And he would just start laughing in the locker room. But everybody was like, RJ, come on, man, try to help the guy. So he would really be that annoying, annoying guy in the locker room that everybody loved at the same time, So, and that's what he is now when you see him on TV. I think he's doing a great job, and his personality shows, and he's always funny and, talking to fans or commentating online. I think he's doing great. So it really doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So this is this is a two-part question for you here. So whoever didn't know about you as a player, what did you bring to the game as a power forward or a small forward, power forward? And looking back at your career, how grateful are you to be in this position, be able to play underneath great coaches like D'Antoni, Jeffrey and Gundy, obviously great playing alongside great players and winning these awards overseas too. So to start with the first part, what did you bring to the game?
Well, it kind of depended where I played. I think I was a player that really adjusted a lot to the different styles and different needs that teams have, even though I was always known as a shooter and as a let's say a guy that goes aggressively, to the rim. I was, I didn't necessarily have the quality to create for others as much. I was never a high assist guy. I was never a tremendous pick and roll player, but I was great at playing off others if that was what was needed, like in the Jersey times, or later in my stage in Europe, being the guy that is more of a facilitator and guy that does all the things necessary for teams to win. Whether that was a small forward or at the power forward, more at the later stage. So I think that was it. I mean, it's very hard to put a label on myself, but I would say that people always saw me as a shooter, scorer, a guy that would bring the offensive spark to the team, and that's something that's the role that I always enjoyed doing. Was never, let's say, a defensive stopper or anything like that. I think that was never either my mentality or my physical ability didn't allow me to do that. But as far as shooting well, slashing offensively, providing offensive spark, and being that gel guy, whether it was on the court or in the locker room, that's something that I hope I brought to the table when teams needed it the most.
Oh, and then the next part is how grateful are you to be in this position? And obviously you had a great career and being able to play with great players and playing underneath great coaches. So how grateful are you to be in this position?
On one hand, I look at some of the players who made a career in one team and played an extensive career in one team, 10, 12 years in one team. And those are obviously usually basketball greats. And, I would definitely would love to be in a situation like this. But on the other hand, I speak with a lot of times when I speak with my family and my friends, I say how fortunate I was to be able to move also from city to city and back in Europe from country to country, and how many people I've met because of that, and how many relationships I made in really different cultures and different environments and different countries. And this is, I think, now looking back, the biggest thing that I'm grateful for. Being on one team and winning a championship, that would be my priority if I could choose. But on the other hand, having this opportunity to really see the world through the basketball is something that I'm extremely grateful for and thankful for, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, so we were talking about, you transitioning from team to team a little bit earlier. So I want to ask you now, this is something even bigger. How do you feel that you transitioned from the EuroLeague to the NBA now? That's obviously two completely different leagues. So like we said earlier, two different play styles, everything. So how do you feel like you adjusted into the NBA, inside the game of basketball and even outside, because those are different circumstances as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it was, especially speaking now to the younger generation who is, the world is much smaller now, than it was 20 years ago. The internet brought a huge change to that. And, if I jump into today's time, I think the people in the States are able to learn more about the cultures in Europe because of the internet, and of course, vice versa. And specifically speaking about basketball, people in Europe, young people know everything about NBA players. I mean, on and off the court, updated daily. Back then, 20 years ago, we didn't have that. So I could see NBA games, at sometimes on TV. It wasn't like I could check my phone every morning and see the highlights. So there was a huge disconnect. And then, moving from Europe to go to the USA, culturally, that was a huge change. That's the first thing. I mean, I spoke the language, so for me, that wasn't a problem. But, just culturally going from Slovenia and Italy, where I played just before I got drafted, then to Houston, Texas, that was a huge change. That was a big change already, not even talking about basketball. So as a young 22-year-old kid, that was something that I had to adjust fast because I couldn't afford that this would take too much of my focus and my time. And then basketball itself, like I said before, I know that I was not physically ready to play in the NBA because back then NBA was a lot more physical than it is now. And I'm not saying it's not physical now because we still have amazing athletes in the NBA, but the rules and the style of the play 20 years ago was much different. There was a lot more ISO game, a lot more post-up game. If somebody at your position, whether it was 1 through 5, saw that you were physically weaker, they would post you immediately. You don't see that right now as often. You see pick and roll game after pick and roll game and spreading the floor and shooters all around, which was something that we played in the Jersey times later on. But when I came to Houston, it was about slower game. It was about posting up. It was about playing off of the big guys. It was playing physical. And that was the biggest adjustment I had to make to get used to the physicality of the game. And that's something I didn't have when I came here, when I came to the NBA first. And I needed to get stronger. I needed to become faster. I needed to go from spot to spot quicker to be able to find shooting spots. And obviously defend better, rebound better, because the game was just so physical that, if your physicality would not match the physicality of the game or of the practice, you would be pretty much invisible.
Yeah.
Like you would be invisible. Like you could not find spots to shoot. You couldn't drive because you were not strong enough. You couldn't rebound because you were not big enough to fight for the spots. Defensively, they would kill you.
Right.
I mean, so the adjustments that I had to make were pretty big. And like I said, it took me about a year or so, or full season, to really take that switch. And another thing that happened to me is once I got drafted and that summer, I had a hernia injury that, I needed a surgery for, and it took me about 2 or 3 months to regain the full strength because it was a pretty, let's say, a complicated situation that I had with the, abdominal muscles and all that. And that's where, the core, that's where all the strength comes from. So building back my strength and then getting used to the new style of basketball, it really took me more time than I wanted.
Interesting.
I have 2 questions for you. One, could you see yourself like coaching in the NBA or like in the European basketball league?
Not coaching, but I am still involved in basketball. I'm actually the managing director of the EuroLeague Players Association. So whatever the NBPA is for the NBA, it's what I am in charge to run here in Europe. I enjoy that much more, but I do have, let's say, my eyes set on potentially one day joining a front office in the NBA. That's something that I would love to do. But at the moment, I'm happy where I am, and I'm not pursuing that passion, at least not yet. But I enjoy that aspect of basketball much more than coaching. I don't see myself coaching, even though I love to work with young players, but more about giving them advice and pointing them in the right direction, but not necessarily working with them on the court.
Yeah. And my second question is, I don't know if you heard, but the NBA actually made history of having a first female coach coaching a game.
Yeah.
What was your reaction towards that decision?
I think, I actually thought it was going to happen earlier, because I know Becky Hammond has been on the bench with the Spurs for a number of years now, and I thought that this would happen earlier. So to be extremely honest, I know that it is a huge moment, but at the same time, I'm not surprised just because of so many things I've heard about her as a coach.
Right.
But most importantly, I think also the times are changing, and the people that are most capable to do the job should do the job, no matter of their gender or their skin color, whatever it is. So, for me, it's honestly, it's not a surprise. And like I said, I thought we would see that sooner, and if Coach Hammond deserves that, hopefully we'll see her one day as a head coach, full-time head coach running the NBA team, and that would be tremendous in my opinion.
Yeah, I was so happy when I saw that because I'm a big advocate in women in sports, and I want to make that push for women to get every opportunity. And I was so happy, and all I have to say is thank you, Greg Popovich, for getting ejected that day.
Hey, I mean, who knows what the reasoning was behind it? Maybe at some point he just said, you know what, it's time to give the coach Hammond the chance, and I'll just get ejected. I don't know, but it doesn't really matter how it happened. The important it is that it did, and I think that's behind us now. That obstacle has been, that hurdle has been, we're over that, and as a society, and hopefully we'll see more of those barriers being broken down in the future weeks, months, years, whatever it is.
So on this show, I usually do this thing called rapid fire segment. But before we get to that, I want to ask you a quick question. And speaking of today's NBA in Europe and the players coming from Europe, so what do you like about it now? Players can go to the G League now, develop their game there, or seeing these Europe players come out early, and like for example, Luka Doncic, and then you see this year's draft. There's a lot of European players here too. So what do you like about this? What do you like about the NBA and how they're growing the game with European and G League players?
Well, I think in the last 20 or 25 years, going from the time when being a European player on the team was kind of an exception. Now it's almost a rule where some teams have 3, 4, even 5 international players or more. I don't know the exact stats, but at least a couple, and that's completely normal. I think that's great. That's great for the popularization of the game around the world. But most importantly, those guys deserve to be there. That's the first thing. I think European players have proved time and time again, going back to Dražen Petrovic and Vlade Divac and Toni Kukoc, and then to now with Luka and all these other greats of the new generation, making a huge step forward. I mean, don't forget that we have a two-time MVP who is from Greece. So. Yeah. Nobody would even think that that's possible. When I came into the league to say, well, we're going to have a MVP that is a foreign player, like, come on, So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think teams knew this for a while, but I think the people, the average fans are starting to realize the quality of the basketball that we have in Europe, and more specifically in EuroLeague, and how many players that go through a EuroLeague system or EuroLeague competition go to the NBA ready. You see some guys that, have been absolutely amazing already in their first year when they go there. And the people in the States have never heard their name, but we in Europe know because they've, as I described earlier, we know how tough the league is. And once you gain the experience here, I don't want to sound like the NBA game is easy, but it's definitely much easier for those guys than to show their talent and their worth in the NBA because they've been through all these crazy environments with high pressure and crazy fans and loud arenas and coaches yelling at you and teams demanding championships. 22, 23-year-old players from Europe have already seen that at the highest stage. And when they go to the NBA, they're not faced by playing in front of 15,000 people or playing for a team that is rebuilding and saying, if we win 30 games this year, that's what we need. European players are like, man, I was 60 games the previous season and I had to win championships. That's nothing. So and I think we're going to continue to see that. So honestly, I'm not surprised with the number or the percentage of the international players, with the high level, that they're showing, with the awards everybody's getting, from Luka to Antetokounmpo to, just. You look down the line, and there's so many players that have won either awards individually or as a team or been part of championships teams. It's a normal thing right now, to have an international player that play a huge role for you on the team. It's not an exception anymore, and that's great to see.
So you ready for the rapid fire segment?
Let's do it.
All right, so I'm gonna let them start it out first. So Sean, or whoever wants to start it out first.
All right, so I'll go with favorite thing to do outside of basketball.
Podcasting.
Podcasting.
Sean?
What's your favorite food?
I go from year to year, it changes, but I would say at this moment I would say Asian, probably. Love Asian. So.
Kawhi Leonard's laugh or Kevin Hart's laugh?
No, nobody can beat Kawhi's Leonard's laugh, in my opinion.
Oh man. But I know this is a rapid fire segment, but this is something I wanted to get to with you because this is huge to me. Because I want to get to your draft experience. What was that like with you, just to shake former commissioner, David Stern's hand? Because that was an awesome moment.
Yeah, that was a great moment. Really, it's I mean, so many players say it's a dream come true, and it really is kind of one of those things that it's almost like a seal you get. You know what I mean? Like you shake, David Stern's hand or Adam Silver's hand nowadays, and it's almost like a seal. Like, okay, I got here. I'm at this stage. So it's definitely a huge moment for every player. But at the same time, I think hopefully players realize this is just the beginning, and this is where all the hard work starts. I always said this, and I firmly believe it's easier to get into the NBA. It's much harder to stay in the NBA, and that's a fact. That's a fact. There's so much talent that it really is a day-to-day battle.
Favorite type of movie?
Probably drama / sci-fi, something in that direction. Space, universe, drama. Interstellar type of movie. So yeah, something like that.
So speaking of podcasting, I got to ask you this: do you have your own podcast, and how many podcasts have you been on so far, including this one?
Actually, I had, together with two of my friends, we had our podcast in Slovenian language that that ran for I want to say 7 years. And we did I think we did maybe 6 years. We did 150 episodes. So it's not like we did it every day. Like we did it every, once or twice a month. But it was actually an extremely popular Slovenian podcast that we did, because it wasn't just basketball. It was about talking to people from different environments, different spheres of the world, so to say. Whether it was, we had astrophysicists, we had historians, we had journalists that would have been to some of the most torn up world's most dangerous war zones that we talked to. We had writers, we had musicians, of course we had basketball players as well. So it's been something that I really enjoy doing, but because of my current work and everything, I just had to decide, which things I cannot do or cannot afford time-wise anymore, and for now we stopped doing it. So, but it's been very, very successful in Slovenia. One of the most listened to podcasts.
Oh wow!
But in regards to how many times I've been a guest, it's been a lot, because I enjoy doing it. I love the genre of podcasting, of talking to people who are not necessarily working for a huge TV network, but people who are down to earth, who are just regular people, just talking about life, about experiences, about basketball. It's something that I enjoy doing, and if my schedule allows, I always love to do it. So
yeah, I just want to say thank you, man. You came to the right podcast. This is what I'm all about. The NR Hour show is all about that you just mentioned. The things you just said. This is what the NR Hour show is about.
There you go.
Oh man. But hey, we just seen the NBA bubble, how they played in the playoffs this last season. I want to ask you, what did you think about the run that the Miami Heat had and Goran Dragic? Unfortunately he got hurt in the NBA Finals against the Lakers, but what a run he had and what a run that team had. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I think that they one of the things that in these bubble environments, I think the people, maybe some people have talked about it, but I think it was a little bit overlooked, is that the teams that were really teams made it. And I think on one hand you saw the Lakers that were really, I don't know the guys on the team, and I haven't been in the bubble, but I felt that they were a team. And the same you could say for Miami. And it's not just because they won or because they made it to the finals. It's because you could see those things earlier in the bubble already. Like the teams love to play for each other. They were battling. They wanted to win. They were not just there trying to spend time and go home as soon as possible. And they believe that they have something. And knowing Goran for a number of years, and knowing where he comes from and his mentality is, I knew that as a veteran on the team, he will try to push the team in that direction. Right. I think Goran had one big advantage, because the bubble environment we saw in Orlando is actually something that Goran has played in in a lot of occasions. Now, okay, yes, with fans in Europe, but the European championships and the world championships that national teams play, they resemble a tournament like Orlando, where you're in one spot, in one hotel for a couple of months, you know, and playing those games and seeing the same faces and going through this grind. I kind of knew that Goran maybe even enjoys that a little bit, even though he was away from family, but he's used to it. And you could see that he didn't care about that, and that he was really leading the team to win at the end. And as you said, Sean, at the end, unfortunately, he was injured. I think he could have been a big factor in the finals. I'm not going to go as far as saying that if he played, the Miami Heat would be a champion, but I think it would definitely make it a lot more interesting and a lot more difficult for the Lakers to win the championship.
Great.
Like Sean said, the NBA has its own bubble. Do you know if the European basketball is doing the same exact thing, or is that completely different? They're doing differently.
Last season, we in March we the season got suspended after the whole virus situation got out of hand in Europe as well, and we then negotiated with the league, and by we I mean the Player Association negotiated with the league whether we would play a bubble in July or not. We ended up negotiating or asking the league not to play in July, just because so many players had a very long lockdown situation and did not allow players enough time to properly prepare for the bubble, which would have been played in July. So the whole season was canceled at the end. We did not have a continuation to the season like you saw in the NBA. The big difference is that in Europe, we don't have the luxury of time that NBA has. What I'm trying to say is that NBA is its own league, and they can decide whatever financially makes more sense, but they can decide at what point they want to start, at what point they want to finish. They want to play 72 games or less or more, whatever they want to do. In Europe, it's a little bit different because there's teams from different countries that play for different domestic leagues as well. Right. So everything has to be synchronized. So you cannot have just one league that says, oh, we're going to do the bubble, or we're going to start then, or we're going to finish later. Well, it doesn't work like that. You need to have everybody's approval, let's say, or everybody's agreement that at some point season starts and some point season ends. And that's what happened. So we ended up canceling the season last year, and this season actually has been going pretty well. So far, out of 101 games that we have played this season, only 4 are still pending. They have been postponed because of the virus situation.
Oh, wow.
Which has been pretty good, actually, knowing that, October, the situation didn't look as good, and we thought that the situation is going to be much worse off as far as canceling games. So we're only after tonight, we're only 3 games still behind schedule, and that's pretty good in my opinion. And hopefully we're going to be able to get through the season. But most of the teams, and really the big majority of the teams, is playing without fans. That's an important fact. So that's just the reality.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy. But last couple of things here for me, but I want to ask you about the Brooklyn Nets, and obviously we're here. We're Knicks fans, so the Knicks are playing better basketball than the Nets right now. But I want to get to the Nets. So obviously, I saw a picture of you on the Barclays Center court, and obviously you go back to the Nets games to see them play. But what do you like about this team? Obviously, they're still trying to gel as a team, and Kevin Durant is going to miss the next 3 games because of the safety protocol. But what do you like about Steve Nash coaching style so far? And Mike D'Antoni's on the staff too, by the way, so that's ironic. But what's it like just seeing that team develop, and what do you like about it so far?
Well, I always kept the Nets close to my heart. It's been the team that I enjoyed playing the most, and even though the whole team and obviously the whole staff and even the management, I think 99% of people probably are new there. I always felt close to that team because of my experiences there. I'm excited for that team. I think they have a chance to be really, really special this year. Possibly even champions. Why not? They have the quality. I mean, Dinwiddie's injury doesn't help. Because he could be a big factor to play or to trade down the line, and unfortunately, that's something that they're gonna have to deal with. But yeah, I'm excited. Especially, it's funny because my daughter asked me if Kevin Durant got my permission to wear number 7. So of course I had to play it, and I said, of course he had to call me, and he asked me for permission, and he said, "Did you give it to him?" I'm like, "Is he wearing number 7?" "Yeah, of course." She's like, wow. So I think at some point when she gets older, I have to tell her that was not true. But yeah, no, I've always been a big Kevin Durant fan, so I'm happy to see him back, and I definitely expect big things from him and from that team.
Yeah, definitely. The last question from me actually is that now, with your current role in the sport, what would you say is like your goal, like moving forward? What would you say is like a goal for you moving forward?
Well, the biggest goal personally for me and for our organization is, because our organization is fairly new, the EuroLeague Player Association has only existed, this is only our 3rd season of existence. So we don't have the history that NBPA has, which has been existing for over 50 or 60 years in the States. So we're at the beginning. My goal, my personal and for the organization, is to really establish the association, to put down a strong foundation, and to bring some necessary changes for players in Europe. That's the big thing. After that happens, and I'm talking about a few years in advance, I'll reevaluate where I'm at personally, and to see what goals are pushing me forward. I'm a person that needs to stay motivated. That's what keeps me happy, and that's what keeps me going. I cannot imagine being without any important or major role that I do, whatever that is, because I kind of need that to go from day to day. And I think as a former player, you always crave that something that motivates you to push you forward. I definitely can't just sit at home and do nothing. That would kill me. After a week, I would go bananas, I think. So we'll see a couple of years down the line. But like I said, it is intriguing, and it's always been intriguing for me to work in front office in the NBA. It's the greatest league in the world, and the league that is constantly evolving and constantly improving. And I'd love to, do my part and help a team there. But like I said, that's down the line, and it's not something I'm considering at this point.
You should definitely work at Joe Tsai in Brooklyn.
Well, we'll see. But they do have a nice arena, I have to say. I've been there. I think it was like 2 years ago was last time I was there, and it's a beautiful arena. And it's so many things that connect to that. Even their logo now has a B in the middle, which it stands for Boki, obviously. So we'll see. I mean, when the time comes, I'm sure I'll evaluate my options. But for now, I'm learning a lot with the work I'm doing, and it's a great responsibility, to represent and to lead over 250 players in the league we have here. It's not a small task, and the league that on one hand is growing and has done a lot of good things, but on the other side, it has a lot of things to improve and a lot of day-to-day issues that we have to tackle. So it's a challenging work, but it's a rewarding work, because help players do the day, and to hearing thank yous and appreciations from players is something that hearing, and it's very fulfilling. Enjoy it now. We'll see what the future brings.
Sean, you got anything else?
Okay.
No. Oh,
I have nothing else.
all right. So before I let you go, I always end the show with 2 inspiring questions. But before that, me and my former co-host Ariel, we partnered up with the Hugh Jackson Foundation. You should definitely check that out. We're ambassadors for them, and we're trying to prevent human trafficking. And the goal for them is we have to help these kids and help other people out to make the right choices and help the community become better. So please go check out the Hugh Jackson Foundation. We partnered up with them, and they do a great job with their foundation. But I just want to bring that up. And the last 2 things here, obviously 2020 was a disaster, and starting off with Kobe. And he was one of my role models growing up. And this is the reason why I always bring up this question to all the guests. And obviously you played against Kobe, and you have 2 daughters, so you're a girl dad too. So do you remember where you were at that day when the news came out, and what did they mean to you?
Yeah, it was. I do remember it was the evening. I was at home, and then I actually received a text from a friend who sent me a link to the news. I think it just happened probably minutes ago that the news came out, and obviously a huge shock. Everybody that kind of, and I didn't know Kobe well. Obviously, I was never his teammate, but just playing against him and being around him and knowing a lot of people who knew him I mean, the appreciation we had for him and the respect we had for him, maybe I would say maybe he was even the most respected player of our generation. I don't know if I could put somebody else above him, even though I played with and against some of the greats. I think for him, for all of us to play against him and to see the desire and the love for the game and the passion he brought, I haven't seen it with anybody else. So to see that, to see that news and to be in a complete disbelief. It was like in the evening here that we found out, like late in the evening, and obviously then the next morning, going sleepless, and the next morning, my daughter has been a huge fan of Kobe. My oldest daughter plays basketball. She's going to turn 12, and she's always been Kobe, watching his highlights and watching, him and Gigi and this whole father-daughter thing, that me and her have going on.
Yeah.
Seeing how hard it hit her, it made it even worse for me. So I think that he was a player that he really touched so many different generations, even the youngest, and especially the women or the girls basketball. And that's something we have in the family. My both girls play basketball. My both daughters play basketball. So for us, that was a huge hit that I don't think we can ever really recover from, because anytime that we kind of run into Kobe's highlights on TV or online or whatever, it becomes silent in our house. It's still very difficult to go over that. I don't think we still really recover that as a family. It's been tough for everyone who knew Kobe and who respected Kobe.
Yeah, I was really hoping that 2021 didn't bring any negative news, but it did with Paul Westphal, and obviously you know about him. And what did he mean to the game?
I know a really good friend of mine, Beno Udrih. He was a point guard for Sacramento Kings, Slovenian player also. He later played for many different teams in the NBA, but a very successful point guard. He was very high on him, and I know he had him as a coach in Sacramento, and he was a legend. I always go back remembering the times that he was coaching the Phoenix Suns and as I said, the Chicago Bulls, and that's when we started watching basketball. And Charles Barkley and the Phoenix team, and the coach they had, and it's a big loss. I think that he was extremely well respected. I did not know him personally, but just talking to people who did know him, obviously everybody thought of him really highly, and he was first a great player, then a tremendous coach, and from what I hear, an exceptional person as well. So. I don't have, not just because of this tragedy, but I don't have high hopes for 2021. And I'm not a pessimistic person, but I think whatever we're going through here, just turning a page in the calendar is not going to change things all of a sudden. I think the whole situation we're in right now is going to last for a little while longer. We just have to dig through it. And I think at some point, there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, and we'll be better off as a society. I truly believe that.
And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right now?
Well, I know in so many different countries, there's people that have done incredible job in those environments, in those lines of work. I remember when the COVID-19 started in Spain, and they had a really interesting and I thought heartwarming custom that I believe it was like at 6 or 7 in the evening, all the people in everywhere went to the balconies, went to the roof of the houses, and just clapped for 10 minutes, giving support to the workers that you just mentioned, and that was something that I thought it was really, really nice to see. So a lot of people, I think, are forgetting that we're still not over that. Even though that this happened months ago, the first big wave that hit Spain, and that is now all over the world. I think that this is something that we have to be forever grateful for, the people that have really worked hours and hours and hours beyond their scheduled work time. So just giving huge support for the people who are in this line of work.
Well said. And there it is. That wraps up episode 655 on the NR Hour Show with Bostjan Nachbar, obviously former NBA player and former European player, and now he runs the European League. And man, keep up the great work. I just want to say thank you for joining us today. This has been an honor. I'll be posting this on all social media formats, and keep up the great work, and hopefully you get the opportunity to run the front office one day in the NBA. So
appreciate it. That would be great. that would be fantastic. But like I said, it's still a lot of things I need to do before I dig into chasing that next goal. But I appreciate your time, guys. This has been great.
Okay. See ya.
Take care.
Yeah, stay safe.
Take care.
Take care.